And we do have Councilmember Reed and Reveller both. We can upgrade them to panelist.
Okay.
That worked.
Right. And can we make it so we can see everybody in the room? I always find it kind of, because I know sometimes there's meetings where you only see the panelists. If we could make, can everybody, so you just have an idea who you're talking to, like as if it were.
Sure, let me
Thank
make
you.
sure I get
Oh, we
everybody.
have 27. That would be great if we could make it so folks can see who's here too. I always feel like that's as close as we can get to an in-person session if at least the faces are available and people.
Don't know if we can actually see all the faces of attendees, but if you click on participants at the bottom, you can get a list of the attendees.
Okay, but we can't put them, I know when I hold my Zoom sessions, it's just everybody's on the screen. We
I
can't.
think we could, but it wouldn't have protections. I think this is one of
Right.
the protections
Yeah, this is the webinar version, so we
to
have to,
prevent Zoom bombing.
right.
Yeah, which happens often, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, yeah, it can.
Okay, great. So this is being recorded. I just want to make sure everybody attending is aware of that. And good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Okay, so I think I can go ahead and we have a quorum. I'll call roll. Do you want to, Megan, Ms. Jones, would you like to call roll?
Councilmember Burns,
Here.
Councilmember Reed.
Here.
Councilmember Ravel
Here.
and Chair Kelly.
Here. Thank you. Okay, and we did not have, so we're convening the August, I'm sorry, sorry, it's been a long day. October, October 25th meeting of the Planning and Development Housing Subcommittee. And it's now 5:10. We have a quorum. We don't have minutes to approve from last time for lack of a quorum. So we can move to public comment at this point. And
Okay, I had 2 people signed up ahead of time. Tina Payton and Carla Sutton. I also see someone has raised their hand. So I guess we can, if you've got a preference for who goes first.
I'm Carla Sutton.
Okay.
Good afternoon. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to express some of the concerns that I have, and Claire, to commend you for the wonderful job you're doing on this subcommittee. But again, I must express my concern as a taxpayer when I see money being given to Robert Crown, a welcoming center, and yet when it comes to small landlords like me, the city of Evanston seems to have amnesia. I also hope that we stop or get rid of this discussion of licensing landlords until we work out the proper procedure for property standards. And my recommendation is to get an outside agency to do all the inspections. Again, thank you for this opportunity and keep up your good work.
Thank you, Mr. Sutton. Okay, next, Ms. Payton.
Let's see, where is Ms. Payton? Okay, I don't think I see Ms. Payton.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought, did you say Ms. Payton? Or did I?
Oh, she did sign up, but I do not see her on the list.
Okay.
Okay, well, perhaps we can, oh, wait, I think this is Ms. Payton. Hold on a second.
Thank you. It's me.
There we go.
Hi, good evening, everyone. So I would like to make some of the same comments as Mr. Sutton. Um, Very upset, not that the people that are coming into Evanston don't deserve a chance. The people here already deserve a chance for the same opportunity that you're giving to outsiders. And that includes me and Carlos and maybe a few other landlords, but we're here providing the housing, the affordable housing that you all cry for and say we don't have enough, and we get thrown under the bus continuously. Now, the 500,000, they just ask for that and suddenly they receive it. The one-stop shop, $1 million, and they don't even have a plan and gave them money. The Oaks, $1 million, Northlight, $2 million. We have been here asking for help for years before any of those people came. And I feel very slighted about this, that we are here struggling to house the people at affordable units and no one is listening. At the Housing and Community Development Committee, now it looks like you have totally thrown me under the bus. When Councilmember Kelly said many months ago that she would like to address the money coming to us landlords that are providing affordable units, you all said no, put it back in the Housing and Community Development Committee, and it looks like that's going to go on forever and we'll never see any money. Also, I just had an inspection at one of my properties last week. It went fine. I passed, but here again, I have nothing in my hand to say that I passed. And I don't know if someone at the city decides to write out additional things that didn't happen in the unit and send it to me. There was very many violations about the inspection, not the inspection itself, but the procedure. So when I was notified, it was notified online. All the inspection notifications and violations is supposed to be mailed to me, which was supposed to be, that was mentioned when I went for another thing in front of the judge. And the judge told the city to mail me my violations or inspections only. And that was never done. Also, there was, when Ike Obo was in property standards, there was a policy passed in September of 2017 and was implemented in October 2017, that if I have 5 to 9 units, only 2 of my units were inspected and all 6 of my units were inspected. So that's another violation. And then I'm also type in my address and they're showing some of violations at a different building and I can't see what the violations are. And also,
Can I ask you a quick question? So you said in September 17th, it was, is this part of city code about if you have 5 to 9?
There was from the Health and Human Services, it says, dear rental property owners. And there was a change and approved by the city on September 6, 2017, and was implemented in October 1st, 2017. So your rental property became, you were either tier 1 or tier 2. So tier 1 properties are inspected every 2 years. And that means that person received 7 or more complaints in 3 years and was found liable 3 or more times by the administrative adjudication for the previous 3 years,
That's a
or
tier.
CDBG. And then tier 2 properties are inspected every 5 years with a history of compliance. So I agree, it has been 5 years since I was inspected. But on the back of the letter, it says if you have less than 5 units, only one of your units is supposed to be inspected. And it goes on and it's tiered out. So my building is 6 units. So it says if you have between 5 and 9 units, only 2 are inspected. So the gentleman that inspected is newer and he was very nice. And
Point of information.
Yes.
I appreciate Tina explaining this now. I do wonder, given our limited time and the scope of the meeting tonight, if Councilmember Kelly, if it's best that some of this comment is saved for another time.
well, she was asking me a question,
No.
council member, about it. And so I'm fine with finishing, but I thought part of the conversation was about inspections, and that's what I was talking about.
Oh, it is. I do find this useful information because about the tier 1 and tier 2 and how it works. I don't want to truncate this because it's exceeding any minutes in public comment. I do find this interesting, and this is exactly the kind of thing that we're talking about. And I think that in the area that we want to be able to make headway on this committee, along with the 3-person. We're not only doing 3-person. Our point is to improve inspections and registration and everything else. So I do appreciate this information. So you're saying in this last inspection, it was for a 9-year,
It was for 6 units.
6 units, but every single one was inspected?
Correct.
And because he was unaware?
I'm assuming he's a newer person. He was hired in June. So he probably doesn't know some of the policies. And like I said, this is something that the city approved and implemented back in 2017. And so my comment is, if we're gonna do inspections here, that it should be followed properly throughout the city of Evanston, not just selected target and you can do whatever you want to. And I am saying in my last inspection, they didn't, several things didn't happen, and it's continuing to happen. And like I said, I don't have anything in my hand to say that I passed the inspection. And I don't know if the inspection department, you know, may like to make up something and send it to me in the mail later.
Okay. Thank you. No, that's very helpful information to understand, since this was just last week, Ms. Payton?
Yes, on Thursday I had an inspection of, and it said all 6 units, and I was fine with that. I mean, you know,
Right.
I did it. I did what the letter said, but that's not how it was supposed to be.
And in terms of mailing paper copy, that was an arrangement just for you? Or
No, they should be mailing copies. And that's what I'm saying. It's not consistent. And I made a comment when I was in court in July of 2020, the administrative hearing, and the inspector was mailing my things to the wrong place.
Okay, I see.
And,
Okay.
but they should be putting it in mail to
For
let
everything.
you know. Even
Okay.
if they send you an email, they're not sending it properly.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, others? I can't, let's see.
I also got Cecile McHugh has raised her hand. So I
Great.
will-
Okay, Cecile.
Hi. I'm sorry, I don't have prepared comments. I didn't realize, until a few minutes ago, this meeting was starting, but I do want to say something. So, bear with me, might ramble a little bit. I live near NU, and while I know that the NU area is not the only area of concern in Evanston, it is a very large area. And a change such as the elimination of the definition of family or the expansion of the number of unrelated people that are allowed in a single dwelling unit has the potential to change this very large area into student housing. The significance of this and the impact on the hundreds of families already living here cannot be simply dismissed. It's possible to allow increased density for circumstances under which it should be allowed, but not allow the population explosion that would result from the elimination of the definition of family and or the expansion of the number of unrelated people in this area. Oh, the number of unrelated people allowed to live in a single dwelling unit in this area. In addition, allowing more unrelated people in a dwelling unit in this area simply drives up the rent and prices families out. Case in point, a house in my block was rented for $7,000 plus per month to 6+ students. And when that landlord was called out for over occupancy and realized that he could not rent to more than 3 students, he was caught, he dropped the rent to $4,800 per month and later to $3,000 per month. And so it is the case that allowing more people to live, unrelated people to live in an apartment in this huge area near Northwestern drives the rent up significantly and makes it completely unaffordable for almost any family that most of us know, except for the very rich. And please consider this area and just don't dismiss it as people complaining about a little extra density. Any home can already have an accessory dwelling unit, and any single family home could therefore, with an accessory dwelling unit, have 6 unrelated people living in it. I'm sorry, I said any home. Any lot with a single family home could have an accessory dwelling unit, and any lot that now has a single family home could build an ADU and have 6 total unrelated people living there already, and that's sufficient. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McHugh. And that's an interesting example that you gave. Thank you. That's helpful. Okay.
Okay, next we
I
have.
actually have a question on that point. I can hold it till later if you want, but I actually have a question.
Sure, go ahead. I
Was
prefer
it-
to not truncate these dialogues, so yeah.
Yeah, so I guess is that true? So my understanding is that the 3 or more unrelated also would apply to someone living in an apartment unit. And therefore, wouldn't it apply to an accessory dwelling unit as well? I just want to get confirmation on that, it sounds like what was just stated is that 6 or more unrelated could live in an accessory dwelling unit, and that doesn't
No,
seem
no,
consistent with my
It
understanding.
And
means in a single unit, and so you could have one, like a
She
multi-unit
means between the
house.
2 units.
Wait, right, so you could have
Yes.
a multi-unit house. One unit could have an ADU, one dwelling could have an ADU within it. So a single dwelling could have up to 6 unrelated if you have an ADU attached or,
I see
internal.
what you mean. Yeah, okay. You're talking about.
But I'm a little
If it was a
unclear.
deta-
while
if
we're-
it was a detached ADU,
If-
you're talking about the main house and the ADU, but I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
yeah,
okay.
the total number on the parcel, I'm sorry, I'm still unmuted, but
No,
I'm
no, no.
sorry, I
Yeah,
was
that-
not clear. But it
No,
means
no,
that,
you probably were. I get it now, though.
Yeah, okay.
I was probably just lost. Thank you.
And while we're on that topic, again, I do prefer to kind of keep a little bit of flow. So Sarah or Megan, could you tell us, so do ADUs vary in terms of capacity between, like, is it just square footage? I mean, so what an ADU could vary, right, in terms of capacity? I know
Absolutely. But the number of people who can live there is still dictated by the square footage and the configuration.
Mhm.
So, and then of course, as of right now, they can't have more than 3 unrelated. So I'll give an example. If somebody had a very large house, you can make an ADU that
Mhm.
is 1 floor. And it could be larger than the 1,000 square foot limit that would be if you were to build a detached ADU.
So it's
But-
almost like multi-unit. It's a way to kind of get around multi-units. As opposed to having multi-unit, the whole floor becomes an ADU minus a certain, right? Because it has to be like 90%. It can't occupy the entire floor. Is that right?
It can be the entire floor if it is an existing building, but of course, there's part of that is never completely quote living space because there's got to be some access for stairs and stuff like that. So, you know, it.
And Chair, really quick, I had another question because everybody says more than 3. Yeah, I'm looking at rooming house definition now. It says 3 or more.
That's
So I want
a
to.
special use, though. Yes, that's when you get a special use as a rooming
So where does
house.
more than 3 come in? Is that definition of what constitutes? I'm trying to see where is more than 3 in the code? Because I clearly see where 3 or more is in the code, but I don't see where
For a
more
rooming
than
house.
3 is.
So for example, for a rooming house,
I'm looking at the rooming house thing right now. So the chapter shall apply to any building, structure, or portion thereof which is equipped to provide for compensation, lodging, rooms, or rooming units to 3 or more persons unrelated to the owner.
Right. So
The way
That's-
I'm reading this is you could only have 2 unrelated without it triggering this. Not more than 3, but 3 or more.
well, you can have 3 people and have it a rooming house, or you can have more than 3 who are unrelated. In a regular dwelling unit, you can have no more than 3 unrelated. So
Okay,
there's
I'm
a little bit
reading
of
this wrong.
crossover.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is saying, okay. I just wanted to get clear on that. I'm reading this a little different, but okay.
so you were thinking on the inverse, that does that therefore mean that you can only have up to 2?
I mean, we can continue. I'll
Okay.
read it a few more times, but I saw this as like 3 or okay. But I'll bring it back up if it's an issue because some places are only 2. You can only have 2 unrelated and not 3. So
it's in the definition of
kind of a
family.
strange.
Right.
Yeah.
If you pull up the definition of family, which, you know, is the topic of our, one of the 2 topics of discussion, that's where it describes it in more detail.
Okay, I'll look it up. Thanks.
Sure. Okay, let's see. Any other?
Okay, we also have Diane.
Okay, Diane, sir.
Yeah, so I just wanted to underscore a comment made earlier about the 3 unrelated adults rule. We live in a neighborhood in the 7th Ward in which a house, a historic house, was rented out to Northwestern students, anywhere from 5 to 7 students living there. And it made our life hell for the entire time that the students rented the house. And the only thing that made it possible for the landlord to pay attention to the city was essentially the 3 unrelated persons rule. This is a unique community in as a college town, and there are certain properties that are more attractive to students. We still don't have the noise issue under control. We still don't have a way of defining it. We have no way of enforcing it. Our police department is understaffed. And, you know, I personally don't want to involve the police in matters that should be able to be settled otherwise. Prevention is our best bet here. To change the rule across Evanston would radically change a certain part of Evanston. And incidentally, I'm not completely convinced that it wouldn't change other areas as well. So before we do away with the rule, we need to get other protocols and other resources in place. And the entire 25 years that I've lived in Evanston, I've seen no stomach for doing that work. So I would strongly advocate keeping the current rule in place, taking a measured approach, looking at it at a community by community, neighborhood by neighborhood approach, and not applying a cookie cutter across. As someone who lived through it, it really will rapidly destroy the neighborhoods that are around Northwestern, within walking distance of Northwestern. And I thank you for your discussion on this. I'm a strong advocate of more housing in the community. I don't think this is the way to do it.
Thank you so much, Diane. Really appreciate those comments. And I'd like to comment more on that, but we'll first let the others speak. So thank you. I really appreciate, and that is what this committee is about, trying to resolve in a community way, figure out the best way to resolve the issue so we have more affordable housing for families and others, and address the issues that you described, which I experience all the time as a council member from emails from residents in this area. Okay, so.
Okay, and next we have Jim. You don't have a last name here. You should be able to talk now.
Hi. No, I was just going to answer where it was in definition of family. Let me lower my hand. Thanks. Sorry.
All right, next we have Lisa Pildes.
Hi. Well, I was just going to say to Councilmember Burns, maybe it wasn't obvious, a rooming house is not an apartment. They're two separate parts of the code that relate to those. And that's where you're getting the more than three or the three or more. And nobody's really talking, I think, here about rooming houses. That's really all I wanted to say, but I just want to pose a question I've been posing, having lived in the Fireman's Park neighborhood until a few years ago when we moved there for 34 years. Would you rather have 3 noisy students or 4 quiet ones? I think the woman who was talking about the trying to get the police to do something to break up parties, and that is, it's longstanding since before she moved to Evanston. And I also think actually that the student issue is the tail wagging the dog, and that there, I kind of don't see this committee as taking a whole of the town approach. I know you talk about it, but I just haven't seen you making any progress on it. And I would like to see that.
Thank you so much, Lisa. I know this is, I think we all do, but I know it's I think coming to a resolution and figuring out our code and zoning so that it does do everything. I agree with you. That's the intent here, is to make some progress finally through this committee. So I hope we will, I'm with you. I hope we finally see progress that residents are satisfied with.
And if, I don't know if I'm still on now, but it would be so helpful if the Northwestern Police would, if we can figure out how they can become more involved, because it's very obvious that the Evanston Police have, frankly, much more important quality of life issues with crime in the city.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And I meant to mention this after Cecile spoke, and so I don't forget, This Thursday, I'm holding the Northwestern City Committee meeting, so I would encourage you all to come to that also. It's a Zoom meeting at 7:30. The link is on the city calendar. I did toured the ward with representatives from the university, knocking on doors where there were students living, to have conversations with students about being good neighbors. So I'm going to continue doing that, and we intend to hold some neighborhood meetings with property owners, residents, and the students. So please, it's this Thursday at 7:30, and it's helpful. This is all something that I'm working on with Dave Davis from that sort of vantage of getting out and talking to our students who live in the wards. So your input is helpful on that, apart from developing codes and zoning to prevent some of the issues. Thank you. Okay.
All right, next we have Phyllis Nickel.
Hi, I was just going to say that as I've listened to this conversation, there's a couple things. The student behavior is one thing, and I'm so glad to know you're working with Dave Davis, because there are lots of things that universities all over the country have done to try to improve the behavior of students or cause students to be more reliable neighbors. But you also have the issues of landlords, people driving up prices, people buying houses to rent. That's an enforcement issue of a different type, and regulations to manage that could be put in place. They aren't now. And working with the real estate community, which some of whom are very, very dedicated to this, would be useful. So I think you want to look at student behavior and the university issues. They may need to build more housing for students. Maybe it's time they look at that. And landlords, we may need to look at different kind of enforcement policies for managing the excesses. And it's just a thought. And anyway, I just wanted to say the two kind of separate pieces here, and the parts of the city that could really stand to have the three unrelated rule removed for other reasons would benefit highly if it was not, again, a cookie cutter approach. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nickel.
Okay, we've got, not sure who this is. It's Pam Phone.
Hello, can
Okay, can you try again?
Hi, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Hi, I would like to make my video work, but I don't know how. Either way, sorry, I'm using my daughter's computer, and it gave her login. My name is Nefret, last name is Halim, Halim. Some of you may know me, others don't. I've been in the landlord community for quite a while. I grew up in that business. I also, maybe about 20 years ago, lived at the corner of Noyes and Ridge for about 7 years. So I have intimate knowledge of the situation in the ward near Fireman's Park, as well as in an office setting. I also own properties kind of throughout the area. And I would like, first of all, I want to thank Councilmember Kelly for being very gracious and including me in this meeting, which I didn't know about until recently. And I would like to give a different perspective about a couple of issues, which I think would be beneficial for this committee. The first thing is just a kind of a market comment that I heard 2 times, which is that landlords and people who buy the homes drive the prices up. And I would like to say that there's a flip side to that, that if you, and I have been on civic issues where I have represented sellers in situations like this. When you are telling people who are selling their home not to sell it to somebody to use it as what the business community calls their highest and best use, you are asking that owner to take a loss on a potential profit. They still may make a profit, but you're asking them, don't sell it for as much as you could, because even though you're leaving, we want to protect our community and keep it the same. If you have sellers who agree to that and your community can work in that way, then you have the ability to do that. A lot of times people, their home is their biggest investment, or whatever real estate they've purchased is their biggest investment. So that's very hard for people to come into that. I'm trying to say that there are two sides to the transaction, right? It's not only the buyer, but it's also the seller, right? So we did a project on Dobson years ago in my office where we converted an apartment building to condos. And this was way before the city had this, I think it's a program called We're Here to Stay. And we tried to make deals with our tenants to sell them the units so that they could own their unit, and that the company that we, the landlord, would bank the transaction. And we did math and we had experts available for them. And out of 26 units, we sold 1 unit. And at that time, our prices were extremely competitive. So the fact is, for people who have I don't want to say who are willing to take the risk and have a mortgage, it's a very hard situation to be put in when you ask them to accept less for their property. So I do want to, I do want to shed a little bit of light on that. I don't know how that can be policed or instituted in the real estate market. I have worked in communities where neighbors have assembled real estate purchasing groups, and we've purchased historic properties that we didn't want demolished because we had to find a way to outbid developers. If the neighborhood wanted to do that, that there are ways to protect your community, but I think that it's an onerous demand to ask the seller to do that. The other thing that I did want to say that's a larger point is with regard to rooming houses. I do, and I may be wrong about this, but I do believe that there may be kind of this push to move these properties towards rooming house status. And I really, as someone who knows Evanston very intimately, I think it's a very disastrous idea. It's an entirely different business than running an apartment building. And I don't think it's good for the community. I would strongly recommend that be kind of pushed to the back burner as a last choice option, because it takes a lot of work to run a successful apartment building, and then to turn that into a rooming house. It's a whole other layer of different kind of services that you're obligated to oblige, as well as different kind of inspections that you need to have. And I think that the problems that are happening in the community could be solved in other ways. And the last thing that I wanted to say, I do hear that from certain people who have spoken that there are issues about calling the police and calling, having noise problems. And I would like to say, I own buildings, I own numerous buildings where I have students. And for me, this has been a many-year-long project to learn how to manage these buildings. I did not understand the dynamic when I was getting into it. I come from a very different kind of world than the Northwestern students, and I didn't go to a university like Northwestern. But just to give you some perspective, I have a group of students who occupied a property of mine. I have every single possible piece of legal jargon and language in my lease and in my riders to prohibit certain disruptive behaviors. Nonetheless, I had a case last year where these tenants, I have them write me a written proposal to ask for permission to have a gathering of more than 3 people. And I denied their application, and they had the party nonetheless. And it was a madhouse. I mean, I really have never seen anything like it. And I levied a fine per my lease, along with other things. And now they're suing me back because all of them have parents who are attorneys. And I have everything in writing. You know, I have a full-time attorney, but I want the community to understand that the landlords would really, nobody wants to have a building that's mismanaged. It's not in the interest of somebody who goes and buys a property and has a mortgage on it and spends time in their building. But I would say that it would behoove the neighbors maybe not to vilify all of the landlords, because I've had some comments that have made it so difficult for me to work in the area. And it's really hard when you can't work with your neighbor. There may indeed be landlords who want what they call an armchair investment, right? They buy some building, who knows where, and then they, you know, but these buildings aren't like that. If people are businessmen and they want an armchair investment, they go buy a 7-Eleven or a car wash or something.
Right.
They don't buy a very heavy use property like these.
Ms. Halim, we
So-
do have several other folks that want to speak, so if you could, but I hear your point, and I think that is part of the point, the purpose of holding more community meetings also with the
Yes.
landlords and the neighbors and the.
I do want to say one thing that I think is maybe the most important point, and I'm so sorry I went over my time, but if you own a building, you are obligated to abide by federal housing laws. And I, as a building owner, I truly am telling this group, very frankly, I do not know how on earth I can ask the questions of the people who come to rent my properties without being liable to be fined by the Illinois Department of Federal and Professional Regulations. I am uncomfortable asking people, how are you related? What are your family relations? Everything that I learned when I get my license prohibits me from talking like that. So, I mean, I mean, and to Lisa Pilates' point, we have people in different wards who have many children who are very, very loud. We have a lot of people who come in from different communities who they get housing vouchers.
Right.
And those kinds of families, I don't think the community would be happy with me putting them in their ward, right? So I think it's a matter of,
We do have, I
I-
have a lot of hands raised, and we have a
Yeah,
short meeting tonight.
And
And
Chair,
Chair,
real quick,
I'd like to jump in there since you're having the meeting be truncated. I really, and it seems like we're not going to get to the actual conversation based on that. So I just want to underscore what Ms. Halim just said there. I think that's really critical to the discussion when it comes up at the next meeting. And I hope we can run more regimented meetings in order to get to the actual meat of what we're trying to do here. But, you know,
yeah, go ahead. I
just-
thought you were done.
I do not believe that the city should be in the business of defining families and forcing landlords or other people to define what a family is to those folks. I think, you know, we want to make sure that we have clear codes on how many people can occupy a certain amount of habitable space, but we don't want to be defining families. We don't want to get in the business of, you know, it's a complex and delicate subject. I think Ms. Halim really hit the nail on the head, particularly with from the standpoint of a landlord being forced to enforce this kind of law.
Right, no, I appreciate that, thank you. And I do think that was a salient point. And Councilmember Reed, have you, because you both missed the last meeting, have you had an opportunity to watch the video from the last meeting about some of the reasons, the legal reasons?
I mean, I
why-
know that Daniel Lauber was brought in.
But I'm just asking
Lauber,
if you had it, have you watched that?
and the discussion there, I think was pretty off base on.
I'm sorry, did you watch the video?
I had discussions with with
No, but I
Corporation
just, you should
Counsel.
watch the video because it was very detailed, and I ask that you please watch that video before we embark on an actual discussion as a committee. He was brought in to talk about from the other side. We've had staff discuss a good number of times the reasons that they, it has been pushed forward, this idea of eliminating family. I ask that you please hear the other side in the presentation that was made at the last meeting. I ask that both of you please watch that so that we all have the same information. Jim, your hand is raised.
Claire, real quick, because I know you have to, you're saying you want to end this meeting at 6 p.m. I set aside my time purposely to have, the meetings that we have. And so I would ask, I don't think we're voting on anything today because I know you have another meeting. If we can continue the meeting after you have to leave, because I have questions that I need to, in order to kind of keep up with this discussion, I would like an opportunity to ask staff questions while we have everyone on the, while they're on the line and during the time that I had set aside for this discussion. So again, we're not voting on anything. I'm fine if you have to leave at 6, but I have questions after public comment that I would like to get to.
Okay. And by the way, I mean, this is recorded, and I will say that community comment and input is so important to informing our decisions. This is not wasted time when our community members are sharing. We want to come, we have not yet resolved this issue. It's been years that this has been an issue where it's been a serious problem. We've had serious problems with regard to, I think, increasing prices of rent and homes. And again, as an alderman, I constantly hear of issues. One house around the corner, the police, I think in the last month, was called 4 times. They had to write reports because of issues related to what we're talking about now. These were not families living in these homes. These were homes that were divided with ADUs and overcapacity. So, okay, so Jim Swanson, for people who've attended, I want to make sure that I hear everybody's comments. Again, I'm taking meticulous notes. This is recorded, and this does help. And we should not be making our decisions. Also, we should hear from the community in order to make decisions for our community.
And just to be clear, I agree with all that. What I'm saying is that you wanted to cut the meeting
No,
short.
I know, I apologize.
Yeah.
We have a meeting. I think our next one is November 4th. Is that right?
So I'm saying I would like to go at least a half hour later after you leave to ask staff questions. Is all I'm saying. I'm totally fine with listening to community.
So is the meeting going to continue?
So I can stay on a little bit. I don't want to get to, it's the lakefront. We'll continue for until, let's say, till 5:20. Would that be okay with you, Bobby?
It just depends how long public comment takes.
Okay.
And again, I'm not trying to rush it. I'm just saying we have to finish that and then we can get to our questions. Okay.
Okay. So we'll go on till we'll try to wrap up by 6:15. Jim.
So just a couple of additional comments. I know that registration is one of the things that we need to get to, and we need to make sure that everything does get registered. Also, when you're registering a property, you can register it as a in terms of the type of property that it's going to be used. And I think those are things that all need to be addressed. Ms. Halim, you own 10 properties just in the 5th Ward on Maple Avenue. So you own an awful lot of Maple Avenue. And what this has done is it's really changed the shape of our neighborhood. This used to be a family neighborhood. I've lived here all my life. And currently, we don't have any kids on the block. My daughter grew up with no other kids around. This changes it. And I think that needs to be controlled through registration, through licensing, and whatever else needs to happen into here, because it really does change the shape of the neighborhood. And many of these, as you speak to the higher, making the higher sale, some of these properties never ever hit the market. Nobody ever sees them hitting it. So yes, they may be making the purchasing it at that, but it's changing the neighborhood, and it's not changing it for the better.
Thank you, Jim. Let's see, any other comments?
That is it. Well, it looks like we've got Lynn who's not spoken yet.
Okay, Lynn, thank you. Lynn?
You should be able to speak now, Lynn.
Lynn, can you hear us? Let's see.
Okay. Looks like Cecile McHugh has another comment she would like to make.
Is that okay? I'm sorry, I'll be fast. Let's see, 3 points. Current non-investor property owners, we bought our homes with the expectation that at most 3 unrelated people would be allowed in our home and in our neighbor's home, which meant that we could rely on not having a large number of students living next door. No investor should have bought a property banking on the fact that the 3 unrelated person rule would not be enforced. I've done some research. There are very few communities who do not have a definition of family to have some sort of control over density versus next to none. The question of families came up and property owners, landlords being uncomfortable about asking who's family and who's not family. Well, we do know that groups of students are definitely not family. My single family home, smaller than many single family homes nearby, could without modification using the property maintenance code occupancy standards, house at least 10 students with minor modification. If you added 2 walls, you could house 2 more, with an ADU 6 more, and that totals between 18 and 20, and multiply that by 10 houses per block. That's 2,000 people. It's just crazy. That's all for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Lynn, are you able to, can you hear us, Lynn? Okay. Okay. So that, I think, does that conclude public comment? Jim?
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
I made a mistake. I'm sorry. I said 2,000. That's ridiculous. That would be 400, 20 by 20 or 10 by 20, 200. Sorry about that. Bye.
That's right. Okay. All right. So that concludes, I believe. Is that right? Public comment?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it does.
Great. Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for participating. It really is so important that we have your input as we move forward in trying to make this situation, improve the situation for our residents. Okay, so let's see. Our next item, we have 2 items for discussion this evening: registration, ways to improve our rental registration and inspection, and then the definition of family. I think my idea as a chair is I would hope that I realize that the definition of family is a hot topic that might go on for several meetings, several months. I would hope that we can also move to at least take some measures, recommend some measures to improve the situation with regard to registration and inspection concurrently. So, half our meetings or a portion of our meetings dedicated to those items, and then the other half dedicated to the 3 unrelated and definition of family. Let's see. So the first item that we have here is discussion updates on rental registration and inspection forms. So I'll ask our staff if you could give us an update. Let's see. So
Angel, could you talk about how routine inspections are being undertaken now?
So routine inspections, because we haven't done any for a number of years due to staffing issues and pre-COVID, we're moving back to doing our routine inspections. We're trying to get a baseline for all of the properties. And we're not doing the percentage of units being inspected. We're inspecting every unit, all common areas, so that we have a baseline moving forward. We are not capable of doing any type of a tiered inspection in terms of violations or code violations or findings of liable and administrative hearings. And we've discussed this previously. It's due to the fact that the database doesn't currently support that system. So we were never able to implement that even when property standards was in the health department. We've never been able to do a tiered inspection schedule. So the inspectors are now going back out into the field and sending notices to owners, scheduling those inspections and doing inspections of all units and common areas.
Okay. And can you, so a little bit about what Ms. Payton spoke to, like tier 1 and tier 2.
We don't have that. We can't. My database doesn't support it right now. I know that that was the intent when the health department instituted that, because we were working with this new software that they were hopeful would do that, but it is not currently set up to make that available. I mean, that is my intent long-term, but right now it's not set up to do that. So we've never been able to do tier 1 and tier 2. The only thing that we were able to implement under the health department was a percentage of the units inspected. And since we haven't been in any unit since well before COVID, we're starting from scratch basically and doing all units in all common areas right now, with the intent that as we move forward with updated database information, we'll be able to move into hopefully a tiered inspection schedule, because we'll have baselines now.
Okay, so this idea of increased inspections for those who've had frequent violations, that currently is not something that's done.
The only thing that we're doing in terms of increased inspections for people who have frequent violations is if we get complaints, and that's typically how it comes up. I mean, a tenant will complain or a neighbor will complain, and we'll send an inspection letter and do an inspection, or we'll schedule an inspection with the tenant and we'll go out and do a complaint inspection. So if there are violations, yes, we're doing more, but not based on our routine rental inspection. The system is not set up to do tiered inspections that way yet.
Okay, and what are we waiting for in order to begin that sort of a process? So
a database that tracks that.
Okay, and that database is, where are we with in terms of having such a database?
We don't. When this was implemented in the health department, we were working on getting a new database at that time, which is the current database that we have now, but it was not implemented properly so that we were able to do those tiered inspections. That's not part of what was done to set up the database for us.
So we have the proper technology, we just have, I'm sorry.
Maybe we do. It was not part of the way it was set up. It wasn't built to do tiered inspections. So if we spend more time on it and put it together, we might be able to, but the intent is also that we look into putting property standards into the Civic Platform database, which is the same database the permit software uses. And this way we have a holistic approach to all of our buildings in town in relation to inspections and permits and what a property is doing that crosses over for both divisions.
Okay, so the current database that we have, we're not going to be using it anymore. We're moving it into a whole new one. Is that what I'm hearing?
We're looking into moving property standards into Civic Platform. Yes, this is the same thing that we've talked about a couple of times.
Right.
It's real quick. Is Civic Platform a seller, or is that two different?
Yes,
it's the same.
Civic Platform is a seller.
Okay, it's the same thing. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
No, I'm
And
just
what we would do, sorry for interrupting, but we would do what we did for the building and zoning and other upgrades to Civic Platform. We would do an RFP. This is generally not an inexpensive thing to implement, because one of the things that has to be done is each type of process has to have its workflow defined and set up so it works properly. And with an automated system, there would be points where data are entered, and that would trigger, a schedule. So if the properties, this is what Angel was talking about, if the property was a tier 1 and would require more frequent inspections, it would be automatically set up based on when you do the inspection and put in that report. If it were one that was much cleaner inspection, shall we say, then it would set it on a different schedule. And actually, the systems can be set up to send notices as well. Now, many people are happy to get things by email. It would obviously there can be people who want to get things by mail, and if that's the court order, then that would be something, or the administrative order, we would have to comply with that.
Great, thank you. And with regard to, so I think many of the issues that we find in terms of both for the tenants and the neighborhoods, as we've mentioned before, involve what seems to be a low rate of rental registrations. So I think we could, it seems that there are measures that could be taken now to improve what we've talked about in previous meetings, the rental registration. I'm wondering the process that I think it's Jim. Jim suggested an idea, and I wonder if you were, that last time we asked that you look into developing a system that he mentioned, whereby, you know, people would identify rental units.
So we've talked about it internally. One of the ideas that came up is, instead of putting addresses out there or anything, that we work with our GIS, and we identify the properties that are registered rentals, and we put them on a map so people can locate them on the map instead of just calling out things. It's more, I don't know, it just seems to be less in your face for a landlord who might not want to be notified or put out there. And then neighbors, landlords, you know, tenants can give us information through 311 or an email that their property may or may not be registered, and then we would do the research to look into that. We haven't gotten to that yet, but that was one of the ideas that came up at one of our other meetings that I thought was a really good idea, was putting it out on a map. Additionally, this doesn't cover registration, but I want to make it a point that on our website that you have the ability to look at your property and see if there's any violations. And to Ms. Payton's point, the reason that we don't list those violations is because oftentimes they are related to a certain unit, and we don't want the next door neighbor to know that, you know, Mrs. Smith in unit B has these particular violations. So we refer people to property standards for information if you have an open case. We don't disclose any of the violations. We only disclose that there's an open case. So you can still look at that, but it doesn't relate to registration. That might be something we could do to see if it's a registered property on that link as well. But I'd have to check with our software to see if they can add that to the search.
So, okay, great. So I think that's a good idea. So mapping, so this would simply identify those that are registered, correct? Like on mapping and maybe a list, and that would be publicly available.
Yes.
Okay.
Similar to the way we do, we currently map yard sales. So you could go on the city's website and you can search for yard sales this weekend, and you can map out your route so you can stop at, you know, 4 or 5 yard sales.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and so do we have a time frame when this could be up and running?
No, I don't, but we can certainly look into it in more detail.
Okay, I think that would be great. Thank you.
And also, Chair, that was it was a staff idea, but it came out of the other working group that we have established.
Yep.
And we just had our second meeting, which was authorized by the Planning and Development Committee, our second working group meeting, which is what was authorized. And we'll be having that particular recommendation plus others coming back to Planning and Development Committee soon. So I just wanted to
however it happens, it doesn't matter to me, just so it happens. And so
I just want to let you know that it's coming.
I just want to point out that it was a resident, Jim Swanson, who laid out a plan for that and proposed it at the meeting.
Yeah, I'm talking about the GIS idea particularly, not the registration list. But those recommendations are coming to Planning and Development soon.
That would be great, but we don't know yet a time frame. So
we do not. We'd have to figure out, pulling a list of registered rentals from the database and then getting that information to GIS and seeing how long it would take them to map it. I don't know, but we can certainly, I'll make sure to send an email to interested parties and get that information.
There is a lot of work being done by our staff to try to clean up the database. Data have been pulled out into Excel, try to get rid of duplicates, inspectors are looking at contact information to try to update it. So we're also trying to get a much cleaner list. We have a lot of duplicates and a lot of, when we did a mailing to all of the landlords that we could identify to try to get input for the small landlord program. We got an awful lot of things that bounced back. And so that's another source of we haven't, and in many cases, we don't have emails for a lot of people. And ultimately, we need to build all that information along with ownership, management, all that stuff we've talked about.
And Angel, quick question about, because I think Ms. Payton, from what I recall, was more so talking about not receiving a document, that she did not receive a document after the inspection.
So
as
she,
what the violation was.
she's correct. Not in this current database, GovSense, as well as our previous database, when we were working in the old database, none of our systems produced a document that said you have no inspection or no violations. What happens is we do the inspection, we come back in, we make a note in the case that says the inspection was conducted, no violations were observed, and we close the case. We have never sent compliance letters to people, because I could do the inspection this morning and send you a letter tomorrow when I'm back at my desk, and you could have a violation tomorrow. So we've never sent compliance inspection letters. We only come back and we make the note. And to Ms. Payton's point, I checked the case from the inspection that she had last week, and the inspector did make the note that no violations were observed.
Okay. And that, what system is that note in again? That's the...
That system is in our current system that we use for our property standards case management, which is GovSense.
Okay.
Okay, great. And with regard to, yeah, go ahead.
Just to the point of Acela again, in GovSense is not Acela, just to be clear.
That's correct. Two different systems.
So my understanding about Acela, because Sarah said something a bit earlier that I just want to clarify, that we would go out for another RFP. My understanding is that we wouldn't do that. The idea is just to work with Acela as opposed to go out in an RFP.
Even working within Acela, what you do is you go out for an RFP, because usually they have, it's sort of like an OEM. You have companies that help you implement it. They can turn on the software so that you have access to that module, but there's a lot of work to actually get your workflows done and make it functional for each individual organization that's using it. It's not like we all have the same report forms. It's not like we all have the same.
Okay.
So this would not
and
be,
Acela doesn't provide that as a service since it's their software?
They don't do it for more complicated things, as I understand. Angel may be able to give you more information because she was more involved in the RFP for the building services.
So property standards is a very small down the line subsection of the RFP that we put out for the building division RFP that we got that money for, that we're working on now. So it was prioritized that we wanted it to be building department and permits, planning and zoning, health department, and business registration, and property standards was at the end of that. So we know that property standards is going to be a piece of that, but we don't know what piece they're going to be able to provide under their roll out the door package, or do we have to have it configured? And if we have to have it configured, then we have to decide exactly what we need and how we want it to work, and do an RFP so that they can provide the cost of how long it's going to take and how much it's going to cost for them to put that together for us. I did attend a sample, if you will. They walked us through their out of the box system that they have, and it's pretty good, but it's not going to do everything that we want it to do. They're going to have to do some configuration for us, similar to what they're doing right now with the building permits, because everybody has a little bit of a different tweak in what their ordinances require and what their processes are. So we know that it's coming, but property standards is down the line for that.
And we do have things.
Everyone else is using GovSense or Acela now, like the health department.
Property standards is using GovSense. Property standards is the only one that's using GovSense.
And everyone else is on Acela?
Everybody, well, built permits is on Acela. Anybody who uses or does work on permits is on Acela. Acela has the capability to be an all-encompassing city system where everybody would be able to see what everybody else is doing. We may not be able to go in and change anything. We would have read-only rights. So I might be able to go, if we put this together, I would be able to go in and see that Public Works is working on a street repair over on Dewey. And so maybe I don't want to schedule any inspections on Dewey this week because I know there's not going to be any parking or access. So I mean, eventually I would love to get to the point where everybody is doing that, but I have to sell it to all the departments. So right now it's anything related to permits, and permits as it relates to building, planning and zoning, health department, because they issue the health licenses there, and then business registration, I think they're going to try and put in there, and then liquor license as well, and then property standards.
Either Angel or Sarah, would you mind just sending me like each division and what software they're using, just so I can be clear on that? Because I don't want to have to.
I can only tell you the divisions for community development.
Divisions is fine. Yeah, we can do that. Yeah, just whatever. Yeah, whatever. Okay, yeah, that's perfect. Thank you.
Great.
And then I have some.
Can I just one more comment on
family
registration?
here, so.
If I could just to wrap up the item, which I think is great, the progress being made on the registration. Look forward to seeing that. Will there also be a mechanism, or if there isn't, could you include a mechanism to include for folks to send in addresses for unlisted rentals? So I realize it won't be public, that would just go to you, but could you include some sort of a link or some mechanism? So if you don't see an address on there, but you know it's, you know,
honestly, I would recommend that they put it in 311. It's the easiest way for us to track. You know, we'd be able to track that we received 15 complaints over the last month of unregistered rentals. And then we would very easily be able to run the report and see what the outcome of that was. Were they really unregistered, or did they just, for whatever reason, not populate on the list? Because that might be a case too. So I think 311 is the best way. So I would just recommend to people, if you want to report, please use 311, and then it would come directly to property standards and we would do the research on it.
Okay,
and
so
that can be done it can be done anonymously too, which I think could be a good thing. So that's another benefit of having it done through 311. We're not asking people to identify themselves if they really don't want to be identified.
So if it could just be, I would say, on whatever the map and the roster, that sounds great. Angel, I would just say maybe put a note on there, please, if you think there's a location of property that is a rental property, please contact 311. And just so it's on there, I think, just to direct people, that would be great. Thank you. Okay, any other comments with regard to registration currently, what is our fine for if someone fails to register? 75?
So if we implement a fine without doing anything else, the code currently allows unregistered, never before registered rentals. We have the ability to, instead of assessing the $200 fee, we can assess a $75 fee. Or instead of assessing just the $200 fee, we can add 75, because it's a $200 initial fee. We can automatically charge them $275 if it's an unregistered rental. However, we have not done that because historically we've always given people the chance to bring a property or a violation into compliance. So what we do if we find an unregistered rental is we send them a notice of violation. We give them the code section. We give them a time to come into compliance. If they don't come into compliance and we have to write a ticket, then we bring it to administrative hearings where they could be fined daily fines up to the judge's discretion instead of just a $75 fine. So it depends.
So I guess my question is, so it's not a flat 75 a day?
No.
I'm just looking at the code. I think it's in the packet. I think I put it in the daily fines. There's a daily fine. Is there a daily fine? There's not. It doesn't say that in our code that there's a daily fine of 75 a day. I thought it did.
That's what it says in the packet.
Hold on. Penalties. 75 for the first offense, 200 for the second offense, and 375 for any third offense. It says each day a building or dwelling unit is not registered can constitute a separate and distinct offense. So we can ask for daily fines, but it's not automatic.
So what is, because it looks like it, I mean, it looks like the fine is $75 a day. I mean, but I don't understand when you say it's not automatic.
Because we take it to administrative hearings and the judge decides whether he wants to provide a daily fine or a single one-day fine.
So the judge can just waive what we have in our code, just so I understand.
No, it doesn't say that. It says shall constitute a separate or distinct offense, correct? But the judges are not typically inclined to do daily fines unless it's an egregious violation. It's the judge's discretion whether they decide to do it or not. The city, when we bring something to court, if it's something that's habitual over and over again, we will ask for daily fines. Just like when we spoke last night about the trees, you know, being a dangerous tree, we would ask for daily fines, but whether or not we get that is at the judge's discretion.
So I know, you know, I believe Ms. Schechter and others have spoken to successful registration programs, and a lot of those programs I know were successful because of the, you know, the fear of, or the threat of a fine. And I'm not suggesting that it should be an initial one, but it does seem that I'm wondering if we can strengthen, that process so that it encourages more people to, because it sounds to me like we're not finding much, right?
I think we could certainly look at that when we did the amnesty for rentals of coach houses when we first legalized it. One of the things that we said was, hey, you know, register by X date and you'll pay the $200 registration fee and you'll, you know, give us your floor plan and we'll make sure that everything is safe and all that stuff. But you won't be fined if you register by that date. And what was interesting is one of our aldermen at the time said, be sure to broaden this to other non-registered rental, because there are a lot that could be something that they could also register and, you know, benefit from not being fined. And we did get a number of other non-ADUs that were registered, especially from condominium associations that were renting out a condo unit or two. It was very interesting. I don't have a real quantification of that, but there are, you know, and, you know, we do say, if you are renting a dwelling unit, it doesn't matter if it's in a condominium building. If you're renting it with a lease, you're supposed to be registered. And of course, if you were doing an Airbnb, you're supposed to be licensed. So, you know, and I think that we can look at doing something similar to that, because when you give a time limit, it tends to make people more motivated, shall we say.
Right. So that would be great if we could, in addition, I like the idea of an amnesty program and to consider sort of reassessing our fee structure or the process even. If there's a better way, I like the idea of an amnesty, and then
well, I was just going to say, I'm sorry, in terms of the way that it's done, I think we have a lot of people who maybe not so much now because housing prices are rising again, but we've run into a lot of people who've purchased homes thinking it would be a great investment. They buy it out of foreclosure or they buy it out of a short sale, and they don't even realize that it's supposed to be rented. I mean, you know, there isn't a whole lot of advertising that says you need to register your rental property, right? So I think if you're a person, and if we find an unregistered rental and you don't have any registered rentals under your name or any licensed LLC to you, right, where you should have already known about the program, then I think those people are the people who should get that, you know, that warning and that chance to bring it into compliance and do that. But if you purchase a property and you are already a property owner, whether it's under your given name, your husband's given name, or an LLC with you as the manager, and you already know the registration is required, then I don't think you should have a chance if we're going to look at changing the way that we're doing things, because you already know about the program. There are plenty of people that don't, but if you already know about it, you should know you bought property 1, 2, 3, and you should be registering it.
Agree, but I think the idea is to encourage with in strong terms a registration. I think offering the amnesty with as well a severe fine structure and process I think would be helpful, so. if
I would agree with the amnesty, and then after the amnesty, we have those two distinct pieces. Where if you're a brand new rental and you didn't know, we give you an additional 30 days maybe to bring it into compliance. And if you're not, then you're assessed fines.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you. And let's see, anything else on the registration? I know I had a few other questions on that. Let's see. The LLC, I know it looks like our code, when I was looking into LLCs, and I think I attached, there's some articles here about LLCs. It seems that our code currently, which I was pleased to see, already requires the disclosure of, what is the term that's used here? It's of all the owners. Let's see. In our code, let's see, currently the property is, so currently the way it stands now, all owners or members of an LLC are to be disclosed. Is that correct? That's what I understood from reading our code, which I was glad to see because I know that is something that some cities are trying to do.
So we require people to give us owner information. We also require people that if you don't, per the code, I should say, per the code, you're supposed to give us all of the owner information or managers. If you have a property manager, you're supposed to disclose that information. If you live more than 50 miles away from the city of Evanston, you're supposed to provide us a property manager. However, our current rental registration fees, $20 for a single family, for $30 for 2 to 4 units, barely covers the cost of opening the envelope and processing the check, or if it's an electronic payment, manually going into the system and documenting that you've paid that rental registration fee and updating the information. Nobody in the history of rental registration, 2008, has returned a registration form and said, I'm sorry, your information is incomplete. We've taken the check and we've moved forward with the information as provided. I don't necessarily agree with that, but for the staff that I have to do this work, it's not worth the time for them to send it back because then I'm chasing them down to get the registration form again.
Mm-hmm.
So we have it in there and they're supposed to give us that information. Some landlords are very diligent in providing what they're supposed to provide and doing what they're supposed to do, and we get that information, and some are not.
Okay,
But
right.
we know
I
how
think
to
it says
sort
that
them
all
too, so.
owners, all
Mhm.
owners of a corporation, and the principals. I think it says actually that the owner and the principals be named of the LLC. And I'm wondering, just because that is important in terms of if there are issues that go beyond a single property, it's helpful if it's actually related to the same owner or the same LLC. It's important that information. So I don't know if there's anything we can do to it also, just like registration, if we can encourage that disclosure, that would be great. I think that would help if there was a way to ensure compliance with that code, which I do think is really great that we have that in our code.
It is good that it's in there. I just don't know that working on all of the other stuff, we're going to be able to get that as well, not with the staff that I have and the time that we have to do rental registration. I'm just being honest. And in terms of citing property owners, we've never cited a property owner as a whole, in all of their entities, right? I've never taken Evanston LLC and sent a notice to Evanston LLC regarding all 3 of their properties. It's each individual property, because if violations are assessed and we have to place a lien, it goes against the PIN number, the property itself. I don't have the ability to divide a multi-property finding of liable into different liens. It doesn't work that way in the system. So we only do it to the single property. So we've never done, sent a notice to Evanston LLC about all of their properties. It's been individual properties. And when we have to do a notice, all of the inspectors know how to find the manager and the contact information for an LLC. So the fact that we don't have it, it takes us one extra step when we're writing a ticket, but it's easier for the inspector to do it than my customer service to do it and send back notices and then chase people down.
Okay.
So how has it been quite a while since we've increased the registration fees? And because
Yeah,
maybe it
it's
sounds like
been-
they.
I
it
don't
sounds
think it's
like
ever
they-
been increased from the,
It's never been increased since 2008 when it was implemented, because $20 isn't even worth the time to open the envelope.
Yeah, so it seems that we ought to consider increasing those fees so they at least cover the staff time that it
And
takes.
that's
processing.
part of, yeah, that's part of the discussion on the other subcommittee as well too,
Oh.
about increasing the fees to cover some of the cost incurred for the program.
Okay.
Great. So it is 6:30. And I know, this was noticed being from 5 to 6:30. So we can start off, I will say, at the beginning, at the top of our meeting with the 3-person discussion. I know that's, I think this is all part of, I think all of this helps the situation. So thank you to all of you for moving forward with strengthening our registration process and looking at strengthening the fine structure with an amnesty. I think we're making some steps and that will help the situation. So with that.
Chair, real quick, and I appreciate you starting off the next meeting with the definition of family question. With the other working group, we've now talked about the last, I think, 20 minutes, 15 minutes, about 3 recommendations that are coming out of that working group. So the amnesty is coming out of there, the GIS, and then I think there was one other. And so just moving forward, please allow those recommendations to be discussed at planning and development, which you're a part of that. And then if we need to bring anything back to this working group, we can, but I really don't.
This is a legislative group. This isn't a working group. So that means that, so anybody can see, working groups aren't really, agendas aren't available to the public. So this is a legislative body. So I would just ask.
So it's planning and development. And that's what I'm saying. It is on its way to planning and development, which you're a member of. And so I'm saying, let's not waste time we just discuss things that are on their way to planning and development. And we haven't been able to really get, I think, to the meat of the discussion, which we're supposed to be focusing on.
I'm sorry, this is all meat of the
family,
discussion, and this is all very important, the registration. We have some serious issues with that. We also have issues about with equity as it applies to inspection. All of these are very valuable, so I don't want to dismiss.
I guess what I'm saying is, please let's start off the next meeting. I agree with you.
That's what I just said.
Definition of family and the following one, please, and then we can put registration after that. But I think we need at least 2 meetings where we're starting off talking about definition of family. So
absolutely. And I ask that you both council members who missed the last meeting, please, I just ask so that we all are coming to the meeting with the same information that you reviewed.
To watch the last, yeah, absolutely.
Thank you very much. Okay, with that said, I'd like to move to close, to adjourn this meeting. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
And then our next meeting is November 10th.
November 10th, yes.
Okay.
And thank you both, Ms. Flax and Ms. Jones and Ms. Schnur. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Thank you all
for attending.
Bye-bye.
All right, take it. Thank you.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.